The city of Medina was quiet beneath the deep darkness of the night. The narrow streets were empty, and the cool desert wind moved gently between the houses built of clay and stone. Most of the people were asleep, resting after a long day of work under the burning Arabian sun. But one man was awake. While the city slept peacefully, he walked slowly through the silent streets. His steps were careful, thoughtful, and steady. This man was not an ordinary traveler wandering through the night. He was the leader of the Muslims. He was Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, the second caliph of Islam. Despite holding one of the greatest positions of leadership in the growing Muslim world, Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, never allowed power to separate him from the people he served. Instead, he often walked through the city at night, quietly observing the conditions of the people. He believed that a leader must know the struggles of his community. He believed that leadership was not about comfort. It was about responsibility. And responsibility meant making sure that no one in the city suffered while he remained unaware. On that particular night, the sky above Medina was filled with stars. The moon cast a soft silver light over the quiet streets as Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, walked with one of his companions. They moved quietly through the neighborhoods on the outskirts of the city, where many of the poorer families lived. For a long time, everything seemed peaceful. But then something unusual caught Umar ibn al-Khattab's attention. In the distance, a faint light flickered near the edge of the settlement. It looked like a small fire burning outside one of the homes. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, slowed his steps and looked carefully toward the light. "Do you see that fire?" he asked his companion. "Yes," the companion replied. "Let us go there," Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, said quietly. As they walked closer, the sound of soft crying reached their ears. It was the sound of children. The cries were weak and tired. The kind of crying that comes not from pain, but from hunger. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, felt his heart tighten as the sound became clearer. When they finally reached the small fire, the scene before them stopped him in his tracks. A woman sat beside a pot that rested over the flames. Her clothes were simple and worn. Beside her sat several small children. Their faces were pale and tired, and their eyes were filled with tears. They were crying softly. Not loudly. Just the quiet crying of children whose strength was fading. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, stepped forward gently. "Peace be upon you," he said. The woman looked up at the stranger standing near her small fire. "And upon you be peace," she replied. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, glanced toward the children. "Why are they crying?" he asked softly. The woman sighed deeply. "They are hungry," she said. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, looked at the pot above the fire. "What are you cooking for them?" he asked. The woman looked toward the pot and then back at him. For a moment she remained silent. Then she spoke words that would remain remembered for generations. "There is nothing in the pot," she said quietly. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, frowned slightly. "Nothing?" The woman shook her head. "I placed stones inside the pot and filled it with water," she explained. "I wanted the children to believe that food is cooking." The small flames beneath the pot flickered in the wind. "They will eventually grow tired and fall asleep while waiting," she continued. "Then their hunger will not trouble them for the night." Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, felt a heavy pain in his chest as he listened. The children continued crying softly beside their mother. Then the woman said something that shook him deeply. "Allah will judge between us and Umar ibn al-Khattab," she said. Her voice carried frustration and sorrow. "He is responsible for our condition." Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, lowered his head. The woman did not know who stood before her. She did not recognize that the man she was blaming was the very man standing beside her fire. But Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, did not become angry. He did not defend himself. Instead, he felt the weight of her words like a heavy stone upon his heart. A leader, he believed, was responsible for the condition of his people. If even one child slept hungry in Medina, then he had failed in his duty. Without saying another word, Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, turned to his companion. "Come with me," he said quietly. They left the small fire and quickly walked back toward the center of the city. The streets were still silent. But Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, moved faster now. His steps were urgent. When they reached the public storehouse of Medina, he entered and began searching among the sacks of grain. He found a large bag filled with flour. Next, he took a container of cooking fat. Then he tied the supplies together carefully. His companion watched as he prepared the bundle. "Let me carry it for you," the companion said. But Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, shook his head firmly. "No," he replied. "I will carry it myself." The companion looked confused. "But you are the leader of the Muslims," he said. "Let me carry the weight." But Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, looked at him with serious eyes. "Will you carry my burden on the day of judgment?" he asked. The companion immediately fell silent. Without another word, Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, lifted the heavy sack of flour onto his own shoulders. The weight bent his back slightly as he adjusted the load. But he did not complain. Instead, he began walking back through the dark streets of Medina. The journey felt longer this time. Each step reminded him of the responsibility he carried as a leader. When they finally reached the small fire again, the children were still crying softly. Their mother looked surprised when the two men returned. Without explanation, Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, placed the sack of flour on the ground. Then he knelt beside the fire. "Bring the pot," he said gently. The woman watched in confusion as Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, opened the sack of flour and began preparing the food himself. He poured flour into the pot. He added water. He placed fat into the mixture. Then he stirred it carefully while the fire burned beneath the pot. Smoke rose around him as he leaned closer to the flames. The companion standing nearby noticed something remarkable. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, was blowing air into the fire to strengthen the flames. Each breath caused the smoke to rise around his beard and face. The leader of the Muslims was kneeling in the dust, cooking food for hungry children in the middle of the night. And he continued stirring the pot patiently until the food was ready. The children watched with hopeful eyes. Soon, the smell of warm food filled the air. For the first time that night, the crying began to fade. But Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, was not finished yet. Because he had made a quiet promise to himself. He would not leave that place until the children were no longer hungry. The small fire crackled quietly in the darkness as Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, continued stirring the pot over the flames. Smoke rose slowly into the cool night air, and the smell of warm food began spreading through the area. The hungry children sat close to the fire, watching with wide eyes. Only a short time earlier they had been crying from hunger, their small voices weak and tired. But now the smell of real food filled the air, and hope had begun to replace their tears. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, remained kneeling beside the fire, carefully stirring the pot. From time to time he leaned forward and blew gently into the flames to keep the fire strong. His companion stood nearby, silently watching. The sight was unforgettable. The leader of the Muslim world, a man whose authority stretched across vast lands, was kneeling in the dust of a poor neighborhood in Medina, cooking food for a family who did not even know who he was. The woman sat quietly, still confused by what was happening. She had never seen these men before. Yet one of them had returned carrying food on his own shoulders and was now cooking it with his own hands. The pot began to bubble softly. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, stirred the mixture again and checked its thickness. The food was almost ready. The children moved closer to the fire. Their eyes followed every movement of the spoon inside the pot. The smallest child leaned toward his mother and whispered weakly, "Is it ready?" Soon, the mother replied softly. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, heard the child's voice and felt his heart tighten again. He continued stirring carefully, making sure the food would cook properly. Finally he nodded. "It is ready now," he said gently. He poured some of the warm food into a small bowl and handed it to the mother. "Feed the children," he said. The mother quickly began giving the food to her children. The first child took a bite. Then another. Within moments, the quiet crying that had filled the night disappeared completely. The children began eating eagerly, their small hands holding the bowls tightly as if they feared the food might disappear. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, watched them carefully. He did not stand up. He did not leave. Instead, he remained seated beside the fire. The companion who had come with him looked at him with curiosity. "Should we go now?" the companion asked quietly. But Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, shook his head. "No," he said softly. "I will not leave until I see them smiling." So he stayed. He watched the children eat. Slowly their tired faces began to change. The sadness faded. Their strength returned. One of the younger children finished his bowl and looked toward the pot hopefully. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, smiled gently and served him another portion. Soon the children were no longer crying. They were talking quietly. Then something beautiful happened. One of the children laughed. It was a small laugh at first. Then another child joined. The sound of their laughter filled the night where only sorrow had existed before. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, smiled quietly as he watched them. Only now did he slowly stand up. The woman looked toward him with gratitude in her eyes. "May Allah reward you," she said sincerely. "You have shown us kindness tonight that we will never forget." Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, nodded gently. Then the woman added something unexpected. "If only Umar ibn al-Khattab knew about people like us," she said. "He would surely help us." The companion standing nearby struggled to remain silent. But Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, simply smiled. He did not reveal his identity. Instead he said calmly, "If you visit the leader tomorrow, you may find him concerned about your situation." The woman nodded gratefully. Then Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, quietly turned and began walking away with his companion. The firelight faded behind them as they moved through the dark streets of Medina once again. For a few moments neither of them spoke. Then the companion finally broke the silence. "Why did you stay so long?" he asked. "You had already given them food." Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, walked slowly as he answered. "Because I saw them crying from hunger." He paused for a moment. "And I wanted to see them laugh." The companion felt deep admiration for the man walking beside him. Yet Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, was not thinking about praise or recognition. His mind was still heavy with concern. Because that night had revealed something painful. A family in Medina had gone hungry. Children had cried themselves to sleep while their leader remained unaware. And for Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, that realization was deeply troubling. When they finally reached his home, the sky had already begun to lighten slightly with the first signs of dawn. But Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, did not immediately go inside. Instead he stood quietly for a moment, looking toward the horizon. Then he spoke softly. "A leader is not truly successful if even one person under his care sleeps hungry." His companion nodded silently. The next morning the city of Medina slowly woke to the golden light of the rising sun. Merchants began opening their stalls. Workers prepared for the day's labor. And people moved through the streets as they always did. But in one small home at the edge of the city, a mother and her children were waking with full stomachs and peaceful hearts. The woman remembered the two men who had helped them during the night. She remembered the stranger who had carried food and cooked it with his own hands. And she remembered his quiet words. If you visit the leader tomorrow, you may find him concerned about your situation. Later that morning, she decided to do exactly that. She gathered her children and made her way toward the place where the leader of the Muslims received the people of Medina. She had no idea that when she arrived there, she would see a face she had already met the night before. The morning sun rose slowly over Medina, spreading golden light across the clay houses and narrow streets of the city. Merchants began opening their stalls, travelers entered through the gates, and the marketplace slowly filled with the sounds of daily life. For most people in the city, it was an ordinary morning. But for one woman and her children, it was very different. They had slept peacefully for the first time in many days. The children had gone to bed with full stomachs, their hunger finally gone. Their small faces, once tired and weak from crying, now looked calm and rested. As the morning light entered their small home, the woman sat quietly for a moment, thinking about what had happened during the night. She remembered the two strangers who had approached her fire. She remembered how one of them had left and then returned carrying a heavy sack of food on his shoulders. She remembered how that same man had knelt beside the fire and cooked for her children with his own hands. The memory filled her heart with gratitude. She had not even learned his name. Yet his kindness had changed everything for her family that night. Then she remembered the words he had spoken before leaving. If you visit the leader tomorrow, you may find him concerned about your situation. At first she had not fully understood what he meant. But now, as she thought about it again, she decided she would go. Perhaps the leader of Medina would listen. Perhaps he would understand the struggles of families like hers. So she gathered her children and began walking toward the center of the city. The streets were already busy as they made their way through the marketplace. People greeted one another, traders arranged their goods, and the smell of fresh bread filled the air. Eventually they reached the place where the leader of the Muslims would meet with the people. A small group had already gathered there. Some had questions. Others had disputes they hoped to resolve. Everyone waited patiently. The woman stood quietly among them with her children beside her. After some time, a man entered the area. People immediately stood up respectfully. The woman looked toward the man with curiosity. Then her eyes widened in shock. It was him. The same man who had cooked food for her children during the night. The same man who had carried the sack of flour on his shoulders. The same man who had knelt beside the fire while smoke rose around him. The man she had blamed for her suffering. It was Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him. The leader of the Muslims. For a moment she could not move. Her heart raced as the realization spread through her mind. The stranger who had helped her family was the very leader she had spoken against. She remembered the words she had said near the fire. Allah will judge between us and Umar ibn al-Khattab. Embarrassment filled her heart. Her face lowered toward the ground. But Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, did not show anger when he saw her. Instead, he greeted her with the same calm kindness he had shown the night before. Peace be upon you, he said. And upon you be peace, she replied softly. Her voice trembled slightly. She struggled to find the right words. I did not know it was you, she said nervously. I spoke harshly about you last night. But Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, gently raised his hand. There is no blame upon you, he said calmly. You spoke the truth about your suffering. The woman looked up in surprise. Instead of being offended, he seemed concerned. He turned his attention toward the children standing beside her. "Are they well today?" he asked. "Yes," she replied quietly. "They slept with full stomachs." Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, smiled slightly when he heard this. Then he turned to the people gathered nearby. "Make sure this family receives regular support from the public storehouse," he instructed. "They should not suffer hunger again." The people nearby nodded respectfully and began arranging assistance. The woman could hardly believe what she was witnessing. The man who ruled over vast lands had personally carried food to her home. And now he was making sure her family would be cared for in the future. Tears filled her eyes. "May Allah reward you," she said sincerely. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, simply nodded. But the events of that night continued to affect him deeply. Because the story did not end there. Later that day, Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, walked through the streets of Medina once again. But his thoughts were heavy. The image of the children crying beside the pot of boiling stones remained in his mind. He remembered the sound of their weak voices. He remembered the pain in the mother's words. And he could not ignore the lesson hidden in that moment. A leader must never become distant from the people. Power must never create comfort that blinds a person to the struggles of others. That night had reminded him of something important. Responsibility. As the day continued, Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, gathered some of his companions. He spoke to them about the condition of the poor in Medina. "We must know the needs of our people," he said. "If we remain unaware of their suffering, we will be questioned by Allah." His companions listened carefully. Many of them already admired the humility and sincerity of Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him. But moments like this revealed the depth of his character even more. That evening, as the sun began setting again over Medina, Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, quietly walked through the streets once more. He did not wear clothing that made him stand out. He did not travel with guards or large groups of followers. Instead, he walked like an ordinary man. Listening. Observing. Making sure that no family suffered in silence. Because he believed something with all his heart. A leader is not measured by the power he holds. He is measured by the people he protects. And the night when he carried a sack of flour on his own shoulders would remain one of the most powerful examples of leadership in the history of Islam. But there was still something more about that night that people would remember for generations. A moment that revealed the true heart of Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him. A moment when a man who ruled a growing empire chose to kneel beside a small fire in the darkness. Just to make sure that hungry children could sleep peacefully. The sun slowly moved across the sky above Medina as the day passed peacefully through the city. Merchants continued their trade in the marketplace, travelers entered and left through the city gates, and families carried on with their daily lives. But for Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, the events of the previous night had left a deep mark on his heart. He could not forget the sight of the hungry children sitting beside the fire. He could not forget the sound of their quiet crying. And he could not forget the pot that contained nothing but stones and water. The image remained in his mind like a powerful reminder of the responsibility that rested upon his shoulders. Later that day, Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, sat among some of his companions. They were discussing matters related to the community when he suddenly spoke about what had happened the night before. "There are families among us who are suffering," he said quietly. His companions listened closely. They knew that when Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, spoke with that tone, something important had happened. He described the scene he had witnessed on the outskirts of the city. He told them about the children who had gone to sleep hungry. He told them about the mother who had placed stones in a pot just to comfort her crying children. The companions felt deep sadness as they listened. One of them spoke carefully. "But the public storehouse distributes food to the poor," he said. "Yes," Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, replied. "But that family still suffered. He paused for a moment. And if one family suffers while we are responsible for this community, then we must ask ourselves why. His words were not spoken with anger. They were spoken with sincerity. Because Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, believed that leadership meant accountability. Not only before people, but before Allah. Later that afternoon, Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, visited the public storehouse again. The storehouse was a large building where supplies such as flour, dates, oil, and other essential goods were kept for the people of Medina. Workers managed the supplies carefully, distributing them to families who needed assistance. As Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, walked through the building, he observed everything carefully. He checked the records. He asked questions. He made sure that the supplies were reaching those who truly needed them. Then he gave new instructions. We must know the condition of every household, he said. No family should suffer hunger while food exists in this storehouse. The workers nodded respectfully. But Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, knew that systems alone were not enough. A leader could not simply rely on reports and records. He had to see things with his own eyes. That evening, as the sun began to set and the sky turned orange above Medina, Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, once again prepared to walk through the city. One of his companions noticed him leaving and approached him. "You are going out again tonight?" the companion asked. "Yes," Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, replied. "Because I do not want another night like the last one." They walked together through the quiet streets. The air had become cooler as darkness slowly covered the city. In many homes small lamps were lit. Families gathered for their evening meals. Children played in the streets before returning home. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, observed everything carefully as he walked. Sometimes he stopped to speak with people. Sometimes he simply listened. He asked about their conditions. He asked about their needs. Many people did not even realize that the man asking these questions was the leader of the Muslim community. Because he did not carry himself with arrogance or pride. Instead, he walked among them like one of them. At one point during the night, Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, stopped and looked toward the horizon beyond the houses of Medina. The desert stretched endlessly beyond the city. Quiet. Dark. Peaceful. But he knew that somewhere within that city were people who might still be struggling. So he continued walking. His companion watched him with admiration. "You carry a heavy burden," the companion said after some time. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, nodded slowly. "Yes," he replied. "And it is a burden I must carry carefully." Then he said something that would be remembered by generations. "If even a mule were to stumble on the road of Iraq, I fear that Allah would ask me why I did not smooth the road for it." The companion felt the weight of those words. They revealed the depth of Umar ibn al-Khattab's sense of responsibility. He did not see leadership as a position of honor. He saw it as a trust. A trust that required constant vigilance. A trust that required humility. And a trust that would one day be judged by Allah. Later that night, as they continued walking through the city, Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, passed by the neighborhood where the hungry family had lived. The small house was quiet now. A dim light glowed inside. He paused for a moment and looked toward it. Then he heard something that brought a gentle smile to his face. Children laughing. Their voices were soft but joyful. The same children who had cried from hunger the night before were now laughing peacefully inside their home. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, stood quietly for a moment, listening. Then he turned and continued walking through the streets. He did not knock on the door. He did not enter the house. Because he did not help them for recognition. He had helped them because it was his duty. And because compassion had guided his heart. The cool night wind moved through the streets as he walked away. But the story of that night would continue to spread through the city of Medina. People would begin telling the story of how the leader of the Muslims carried a sack of flour on his own shoulders. How he knelt beside a small fire. How he cooked food with his own hands for hungry children. And how he refused to leave until their tears had turned into laughter. Yet the greatest lesson of that story was not about power or authority. It was about humility. Because true leadership is not shown in palaces or thrones. It is shown in moments when a person chooses to serve others. And for Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, that choice was not extraordinary. It was simply the way he believed a leader should live. But the impact of that night would continue inspiring people for generations. Because it showed that even the most powerful leader could kneel beside a small fire in the darkness. Just to make sure that hungry children would sleep peacefully. The night sky stretched endlessly above the city of Medina as darkness gently covered the streets once again. Small lamps glowed in the windows of homes, and the cool desert wind moved quietly between the narrow paths of the city. For many people, the night was simply a time to rest after a long day. But for Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, the night had become something else entirely. It was the time when he felt most responsible for the people under his care. While others slept peacefully, he often walked through the city to make sure that no one was suffering in silence. The events of the previous nights had strengthened this habit even more. The image of the hungry children beside the empty pot had changed something deep inside him. Even though their situation had now been resolved, the memory remained. It reminded him constantly that leadership was not a title. It was a trust. A trust that Allah would question him about. One evening, as the sun slowly disappeared behind the horizon, Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, once again stepped out into the streets of Medina. The sky above was painted with soft shades of orange and purple as the last light of day faded away. A companion walking with him noticed the thoughtful expression on his face. "You have been thinking deeply these days," the companion said. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, nodded slowly. "Yes," he replied. "Because leadership is a heavy responsibility." They continued walking through the quiet streets. In some homes, families were gathering for their evening meals. In others, children played before returning inside. The peaceful sounds of life filled the city. Yet Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, continued observing everything carefully. Eventually, they reached an area near the outskirts of Medina. The houses there were smaller and simpler than those near the marketplace. Many of the poorer families lived in these neighborhoods. As they walked, the companion suddenly asked a question. "Do you ever become tired of carrying these responsibilities?" Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, stopped walking for a moment. Then he looked toward the dark horizon beyond the city. "The responsibility is heavy," he said quietly. "But the reward with Allah is greater." They continued walking again. After some time, they passed near the same small house where the hungry family had lived. The home looked peaceful now. Soft light shone through the doorway. From inside came the gentle sound of children talking. Their voices were calm. Happy. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, paused once again. He listened for a moment. Then a smile slowly appeared on his face. The companion noticed. "You are thinking about that night again," he said. "Yes," Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, replied. "I remember how they were crying." He paused. "And now they are laughing." The companion looked at him with admiration. Many rulers throughout history had commanded armies, built cities, and gained wealth. But very few had cared deeply about the laughter of hungry children. That night had become a lesson not only for Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, but also for the people of Medina. The story slowly spread through the city. People spoke about how their leader had carried a heavy sack of flour on his own shoulders. They spoke about how he had knelt beside a fire in the darkness. They spoke about how he had cooked food with his own hands, and how he had refused to leave until the children were smiling. But what impressed people most was not the act itself. It was the sincerity behind it. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, had not done it for recognition. He had not announced it publicly. In fact, the woman herself had not even known who he was at the time. He had simply done what he believed was right, because he knew that every action would one day be accounted for before Allah. Days later, Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, addressed the people of Medina. A group had gathered to listen as he spoke. His words were calm but powerful. "O people," he said, "if I see hunger among you, it is my responsibility to remove it. If someone is suffering while I am unaware, then I have failed in my duty." The people listened with deep respect, because they knew his words were not empty promises. They had seen his actions. They had heard the stories. They knew that he lived according to the principles he spoke about. Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, then reminded them of something important. "A leader is a servant of his people," he said. "He is not above them. He is responsible for them." The gathering remained silent as the weight of his words settled into their hearts. Later that evening, as the city slowly returned to its normal rhythm, Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, once again walked quietly through the streets. He did not seek praise. He did not expect recognition. Instead, he simply continued fulfilling the responsibility that Allah had placed upon him. The cool desert wind moved gently through the city. Stars appeared one by one in the night sky above Medina. And somewhere inside one small home, children slept peacefully after a full meal. Their stomachs were no longer empty. Their tears had been replaced with laughter. And the man responsible for that change walked quietly through the streets, unknown to many of the people he protected, but known to Allah. And the story of the night when Umar ibn al-Khattab, may Allah be pleased with him, carried food on his own shoulders would remain a timeless reminder for generations. A reminder that true leadership is not about power. It is about compassion. Not about authority, but about responsibility. And sometimes, the greatest example of leadership is shown not on a throne, but beside a small fire in the darkness of the night, cooking food for hungry children until their tears turn into smiles.